Mr. DeRoe is Managing Director and co-head of the Recapitalization and Restructuring Group. Bill has been in the investment banking industry for 20 years, advising a wide spectrum of clients and investors. Alex is a Managing Director at Moelis & Company. He advises public and private real estate clients, private equity investment firms, and a wide range of corporate financing. Please give them your attention. The presentation is going to be very important. I look forward to working with all of you in the years to come. And I have to go now because I got to make my borough runs before I get home. So thank you all very much, and stay together.
Thank you, Scott, and good afternoon. I'm Alex Rubin, partner at Moelis & Company, and delighted to be here today. Is that better? How's that? All right. Thanks, Al. Okay, good afternoon. I'm Alex Rubin from Moelis & Company, and with my partner Bill Darrow and other members of our team, as well as Meredith and representatives from Paul Weiss, we are really quite delighted to be here. This situation, this transaction, for all of us, represents an extraordinarily complex intersection of capital markets, our court system, and real estate finance, perhaps on a magnitude and scope not previously experienced. However, this is not just a collection of numbers on a page or bond prices on a Wall Street trading floor. This is a transaction that impacts thousands of individuals. This is a transaction that impacts an important community, a neighborhood, a home to 25,000 New York City residents. And I just want to make sure you understand, your advisors, the investment banking and legal team that is working on your behalf, is extraordinarily attuned and respectful of this dynamic. When we first got involved earlier this year, both the Moelis and Paul Weiss teams recognized and articulated to members of the Tenant Association board that in our assessment, this overall transaction was going to produce two central actors that would be necessary to ultimately develop a successful conclusion and solution. Those two actors were CW Capital as special servicer for the $3 billion first mortgage, and the Tenants Association as the central, really driving force representing the interests of the most important collateral in this transaction, the residents who actually live here. The Tenant Board has articulated publicly and conveyed privately three critical elements that we have done our best to incorporate into our pursuit of a solution here, and they are the importance of cohesion. You've heard it mentioned a couple times this morning, but the unity, the bringing together of this diverse community of tenants, that will in fact be terribly important that you continue what has already been accomplished in that regard. That will be important to ultimately bringing together a successful outcome. Stability of the community and trying to prevent repeat of some of the upheaval that has been experienced here in recent years. And finally, choice for all of you as tenants. Again, Dan spoke about it earlier. We understand and agree with the importance that for those tenants who care to continue renting their apartments under rent stabilization, that very much must be available to you, and that the opportunity to purchase your apartments in some form of conversion plan is elective or optional. I just want to make sure you hear from us, your advisors. We understand that. We are committed to delivering that. And what I'd like to do, maybe to frame discussion and comments by Bill, Meredith, and me today, I want to review, just at a high level, some dates and events that have really helped develop the situation we find ourselves discussing here this afternoon. If we start back in October of 2006, I'm sure many of you will remember that was back when Tishman Speyer and BlackRock emerged as the successful winners in a hotly contested auction to acquire this community. There was $6.3 billion of capital that was ultimately deployed in that transaction. I think we've been through in previous discussions the components of that, but nonetheless the largest up until that point, and since highest price ever paid for a single commercial property asset in this country. That $3 billion first mortgage, as I think some of you know, was priced in the capital markets at an interest rate of 6.3%. Just some quick arithmetic, that resulted in an annual mortgage interest payment of $189 million a year. That's just under $16 million a month. And 3 years and 3 months after completing that acquisition, Tishman Speyer and BlackRock defaulted. They defaulted on a $15,750,000 interest payment due in January of this year, and that set in motion the series of events that ultimately resulted in my firm and Meredith's firm getting involved on your behalf. That default was followed, as I think a number of you will recall, by a hedge fund firm known as Appaloosa, trying to prevent CW Capital, the special servicer, from continuing their foreclosure action. They were rebuffed, and they were rebuffed in the federal district court system by Judge, I think it was Alvin Hellerstein, and that was in April of this year, April of 2010. Also a very important date in really trying to limit the number of interlopers or external parties who could influence the outcome in this overall transaction. I think we might next consider August of this year, August 2010. That was when we learned that Pershing Square had collaborated with Winthrop Realty and acquired for 45 million, 15 cents on the dollar, 300 million of the senior mezzanine interest in the capital stack. It was the following month, middle of September, that their attempts, as Dan was alluding to basically step in front of CW Capital's foreclosure action was rejected by Judge Lowe in New York State Supreme Court. 12 days later, the appellate division, their appeal to reverse that decision was basically declined, denied in the court system, appellate division. And the following month, this month, as was also mentioned on October 22nd, last Friday, Rose Associates was installed as property manager for Stuyvesant Town, Peter Cooper Village. And finally, Wednesday of this past week, October 27th, CW completed the purchase of that senior mezzanine interest that had been owned by Pershing Square and Winthrop, effectively clearing the table, clearing the decks of external parties that had been pursuing their own interests and ultimately allowing CW Capital, as identified earlier, consistent with our view, to ultimately set in motion what we hope to be a constructive and commercial dialogue with them as we seek to explore and ultimately implement an elective conversion plan along the lines that has been described to you by your tenant association board leadership. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Meredith, and thank you all very much.
Great. Alex, thank you, and thank you to everybody who's spoken today. It's really been a terrific session, I think. Where things stand today, as Alex said, is that, just so you all know this, the property is still owned by the Tishman Speyer BlackRock Partnership. CW Capital is still the special servicer in charge of the first mortgage on the property. They have received a judgment of foreclosure of that first mortgage that would allow them to hold a foreclosure sale and take title to the property from CW Capital, but they haven't done that. So they are still in the first mortgage position holding the judgment of foreclosure. As Alex mentioned, they also have now bought the senior mezzanine loan position, which means that they also could hold a mezzanine foreclosure sale and take title to the ownership of the real estate from Tishman Speyer, while leaving their first mortgage in place. If all of this sounds confusing, what it does is it really gives CW Capital a tremendous number of options as to how they take title to move forward to dispose of the property. It's enabled them to be in control of all of the different aspects and all of the different financial interests in the property, while avoiding an actual transfer of title that would have triggered a large transfer tax. I'm sure you've read about the transfer tax. I know we talked about it when we were back here at our last meeting. And so the plan appears to be that CW Capital, that this situation in the property will remain in effect until CW Capital works out the ultimate disposition plan for the property, which will mean really one of two routes for CW Capital. Either they will seek to sell this property as a rental. In many ways, that is their easiest route, because to sell the property as a rental really just involves, I think in large part, settling the Roberts case, determining what the rents are going to be at the property, then seeking bids and literally deeding the property. There will probably be a foreclosure along the way at the very end that will lead to the sale of the property. But I think for our purposes, that is a mere detail, but doesn't describe the transaction. So that's route number one, is the rental route. I think that CW has indicated, and I think our own analysis shows as well, that the sale of the property for a rental will produce much less than the sale of the property as a co-op or a condominium conversion. However, the pricing of that, and this is, I know, a question that is very central to all of us. One of the things that is important to understand is CW looks at their alternatives. They are going to look to a combination of achieving the best financial result, but achieving the best financial result with the greatest certainty that they can have. In order for a conversion to be the right route for CW out of the situation they find themselves in now, conversion is going to have to produce a return that is somewhat reasonably substantially more than they could expect to get from the sale of a rental. And the reason is because ultimately the proceeds that CW will get from a conversion are more speculative than the proceeds they will get from purely from sale as a rental. You don't know how many tenants will buy, and the ultimate pricing and the ultimate value that CW gets out of the deal will depend on how many tenants buy. So, as Dan had mentioned, and I want to emphasize again because I think this is so key, the most successful conversion from CW's perspective is going to be the one that is the most successful conversion from our perspective. Namely, one that is the most affordable to you that is the most economically attractive to you so that it becomes something that you want to invest your money in. It becomes something that is